Episode 95.
All big changes start with a swift kick in the ass. Join the journey of lifelong friends, John Curran and Tom Stewart, as they make conventional thought bend over and take a boot to the keister. Warning, listeners may notice a force equal to or greater than needed to get your ass moving. A swift kick in the ass, living life on your terms.
Welcome to another episode of A Swift Kick in the Ass. This is your host, John Curran. Unfortunately, Tom won't be joining us today. Today's episode, Pissing on Kitty. Over the years, Tom and I have discussed many different topics here on A Swift Kick in the Ass. Most often, we speak of the importance of owning our decisions, holding ourselves responsible for taking control of our life and increasing our power. We also speak of accountability, all good things that are key to living life on your terms. Today, I'd like to discuss the importance of the people that we meet and that come along with us on our journey. So this is about people, friendship, and the self-imposed limits that we place on ourselves as we try to live life on our own terms. In Dr. Susan Jeffers' book, Feel the Fear But Do It Anyway, Dr. Jeffers talks about comfort zones and how we can expand our comfort zones when we do things that are uncomfortable by taking risks. With each risk we take, whenever we put ourselves out there and push our limits, we increase our power and create a new zone of comfort. Think of it like rings of a tree. As a tree ages, it forms new rings. And the older the tree, the more rings you'll see when we eventually cut it down. That's the sad part, I guess. The tree is adding layers to its foundation. So each year we'll see a new ring. This is how old we can tell the tree is. The outside of the ring is the bark. And what does the bark do? Well, it protects the tree from the outside world. It keeps the inside safe. And in this sense, we, people, also put up barriers to protect ourselves from the outside world. People we know and trust get beyond the bark, and they're included in our comfort zone. Letting people into our inner comfort zones does carry risks. And we can get hurt, especially when that person is controlling, manipulative, and motivated by their own self-interest rather than sharing your journey. It's a risk that we allow ourselves to take when we get closer to others. Heartache, disappointment, resentment, hatred, and a whole slew of other negative emotions can result when we let the wrong people into our lives. Prior to meeting my wife, I fell in love with the wrong girl. We were living together, engaged, and planning our wedding. It was a pretty serious relationship. It was in this relationship that I learned about how blinding love can be. How blind was it? Well, very few of my friends liked her. Most of them told me about not liking her, but I didn't really care to listen. In fact, a lot of them will say they told me time and time again how much they didn't like her and how I was being manipulated and lied to, and I just didn't care to listen. I don't even really remember them telling me that. My parents didn't like her, and in fact, they told me that they would not be attending the wedding. That's how much they disliked her and how much faith they had that marriage would not last. But did that stop our planning? No, not at all. We kept going. And did this situation strain my relationships with others? Yes, absolutely. It burned a lot of bridges. And did I care? Well, yes and no. I was blinded by my feelings and blamed others for not respecting my decision to marry this girl. I thought I knew what I was doing, and I really wasn't looking for outside influence. I knew what I wanted to do. And I really didn't want to know the truth. I didn't want to admit it to myself that this was the wrong girl. Until we got closer to the wedding, I really didn't start coming to my senses about this and coming to terms with the ramifications of this decision. I began to see how damaged she was and how she was manipulating me and how she was burning bridges between everyone that I cared about. This type of love was very unhealthy. I was becoming someone I really was not and had no intentions of ever becoming. This woke me up. Though I was never physically or emotionally abusive towards her, she couldn't say the same. I didn't try to control or intimidate her. I didn't try to change her. I wasn't scared of her in most ways. And I felt I could handle myself in this relationship. In fact, I thought I could, I guess maybe I did think I could change her because she obviously had not been shown love in her younger and formative years. And I thought I could help her. Now, I wouldn't condone domestic violence and had never experienced it before living with this girl and during this time of my life. However, as we got closer to the wedding date, I could see how so many people get pulled into it and how difficult it is to escape. She told me once, she said, I wish you would just hit me so that I know you care. That's how messed up this relationship was. I thought I could help her. But that was what actually opened my eyes and got me thinking more clearly. She needed help. I told her that, and she refused. She saw nothing wrong with her line of thinking, and in her eyes, I was not accepting her for who she was. She drew her line in the sand, and I pissed on her cat. Now, I have to admit that pissing on her cat was not intentional. As I said, we were living together, and I always happened to be in the downstairs bathroom, taking a leak, when the cat surprised me and came up from behind and rubbed against my leg. I guess to that point in the relationship with the cat was getting better. In my surprise, I turned and I pissed on the cat, which I have to admit did bring a smile to my face. But the backstory in that is that the first night that I had ever spent with that girl was at her apartment. And in the middle of the night, I woke up to this warm sensation right about right on my legs, near my knees. And I woke up, and this damn cat was straddled over me, taking a piss like a racehorse. It was disgusting. That cat got me so good that night. And so I have to say I was happy to return the favor, 9 months down the road or however long that was when that happened. But looking back at it now, even though it makes for a funny story, I should have seen that cat pissing on me as an omen of things to come. Had I stayed in that relationship and said I do, I am sure much worse would have happened to me. In fact, I'm sure that one of us, not the cat, the girl, would have been dead and the other one in prison. I hate to think of who would have been where. It was very unhealthy, as I mentioned. And calling the wedding off just 2.5 weeks prior to the date, especially in the state of Georgia, where if your name is on the lease with a member of the opposite sex, if you sign a year lease, it's considered common law marriage. So it was almost like going through a divorce, and it cost me about $15,000 to get through. And, $15,000 doesn't seem like all that much, but in today's dollars, that equates to about $25,000. Now, if I had the opportunity to do it all over again, I would have left that relationship when the cat pissed on me, honestly. But really, I gained so much, and I learned so much about relationships, and I wouldn't change a thing. I mean, I would have saved myself, I guess, the heartache of going through that, but I would not have changed pissing on that cat. That was a good thing. I got even with it. There are many stories I can tell about how that relationship went bad and what was so bad about it and how crazy it was. It would just blow your socks off. But it boils down to this. What some people see as love and caring isn't necessarily love and caring at all. It's manipulation and lying. It's control, not just an influence, in a very unhealthy way for negative reasons. Now, love should strengthen our support system. A marriage is bringing together friends and family as a public demonstration of your love and our public declaration of your love. It's not to isolate you from those that you love and care about. It should bring more people into the fold to share in that love. And we all love love. And the fact is that we need people in our lives, people we love and care about, and who love and care about us. I didn't have that in this relationship. So, but having these bad relationships is part of our journey. I'm sure all of us have been in both good and bad relationships. And it helps us appreciate the good relationships when we have one. When I met my wife, I appreciated our relationship so much more because of the bad relationships that I had in my past. So, but this goes beyond romantic love. It goes much deeper than that. Relationships, romantic, platonic, maybe more business than pleasure, or mere acquaintance. It's important to us, and it's the foundation of our lives. People are much more important in our lives than we probably give credit to. We need other people to help us grow and push us beyond our limits of understanding, and as a result, we live better lives from what we learn from each other. It's in this bad relationship that we learn to appreciate the good relationships, and they do absolutely serve as powerful life lessons. And how we choose to handle our relationships impacts our lives. Now, considering the divorce rate, my choice to break off an engagement so close to the wedding date is probably not much what the majority of people would do. In fact, a lot of people told me I had big kahunas. Kahunas? Balls. I had big balls for doing what I did. A lot of people would have just gone through with the marriage at that point. But in my conscience, I just couldn't do it. I've reached a point to where I was like, it was almost like a light switch went off. And I realized there was no way I could go and enter into a marriage, a lifetime commitment, knowing what I knew about her. It was an abusive relationship. And unfortunately, I think a lot of people would just go through it and possibly involve children and start building a life. And I think that ends up hurting more people in the end, rather than just, growing a pair and making a decision. You're changing your mind and taking the heat for that and paying the price for making a decision and then going back on your word. I mean, I spent $15,000, but I'd do it all over again if I had to. That was the right decision for me. So if you're in an abusive relationship, you do have a say as to whether or not you want to continue it. No matter how long you've been in that relationship, it is your choice. And there is help available if you want it. But you have to make that choice for yourself, and moving forward with that decision can be extremely difficult. I wouldn't want to have to go through that part of my life again. And luckily, I don't have to. from my experience, though the decision is not an easy one to make, and there are countless considerations to make, which are extremely personal and can get quite complex, I have to say I'm very thankful that I got out when I did. And what I learned from it is that we can't control other people. We can only control ourselves, our thoughts, our actions, even our emotions. Getting out of an abusive relationship and that negative influence of another is not easy. It was certainly not easy, especially considering we lived together. There were police involved. There were lawyers involved. It was horrible. It can seem like there is no way out when you're deep within a bad relationship. But there is a way out. And there are others that can help you through that process so that you can renegotiate that term of your life. You don't have to be stuck with the wrong person the rest of your life. As much as I'm for making a commitment and sticking with that commitment and living up to your word, especially when children get involved, I think the relationship becomes bigger than that couple. There are good reasons why you would want to get out of it, even after you've married. It's a very personal decision, and I'm certainly not judging anyone on their own decisions. Just from my own experience, this was the right move for me. I'm not a mental health professional, nor am I a lawyer. This experience is my own, and this was my takeaway from that experience. So I hope that this episode gets you thinking about the relationships that you have in your life, whether it's your spouse, whether it's your boyfriend or girlfriend, whether it's a friend, an acquaintance, people that you work with, at work. Think about these relationships and these people that are part of your life, and that can help you assess the current terms of your life, and help you decide, is this something you really want to have to deal with, or should you move on? I hope that my experience of pissing on a kitty gives you the strength and inspiration you need to renegotiate your own life as you see fit. Now, many of my friends are healthcare professionals. I am not, although I work in healthcare. I'm on the business side of it. And recently, I saw that one of them passed along a list of signs that you may need to consider if you may need to consider for therapy if you need therapy. And therapy is a great way to get an unbiased point of view, a professional point of view that can help you make a decision. So I thought I'd close the episode with that list, and I'll add in some of my insight to these items. So signs that you need to consider seeking therapy. 1. And it's probably going to be work against me to count these out because I don't have it counted down in my notes. I just have it as bullet points. 1, your friends are tired of listening to you talk about your problems. Now, with that, I'd say that a good friend is going to be willing to listen to you and your problems. But listening is a two-way street. There's input and there's response. You want to be able to be open with your friends. So I encourage you to actively listen and open yourselves to what your friends may be saying. Through my own relationship, the one where I almost got married, my ears were closed. My eyes were closed. I was blinded and deaf and dumb about it. I'm not saying just blindly accept what your friends are saying, but think about what they're saying and why they're saying it. They probably don't want to be in that conversation either. Some of those discussions are extremely difficult to say or to hear, regardless of what end you're on. In those discussions, they're not pleasant. But better to involve your support network, involve your friends. They're part of your life. They care about you, and they can offer insight that you may not have considered. A professional can also offer unbiased insight and an opinion that your friends might not see, and they're trained to make sure that they're giving you good, solid advice and tools that can enable you to work through these type of problems. 2, if you know the solution and you have difficulty starting on making changes, you might want to consider talking to a professional. You may claim to others that you don't know what to do, but deep inside, I think that most people are just ignoring the fact that they know what the solution is, and they don't want to admit it that it's a choice, because oftentimes these choices are not something they would want to make. It's not something they want to do, but it doesn't matter if you like the choice or not. It's still a choice. And you should treat it as such, and you should give it enough thought to recognize, that this may be a possible solution. You don't like it. You don't have to like it, but it is a possible option. And there's always going to be a number of different options. There's so many different paths, countless paths from point A to point B. They may or may not be, it may not be a question of what's right or wrong. It might be more of a question of difference. If you're walking down, a path out in the forest and you come to a crossroads, and on one path, if you go to the left, there's blueberries on that path. Love me some blueberries. But if you go to the right, there are strawberries. Or maybe on another path, there's raspberries. They're just different paths that you can go on. It's not necessarily a question of right or wrong. And there's no saying that you can't double back and take another path if you get tired of one, or if that path is not working out or it's not what you thought it should be. There are always options. And we might just not like the options. But that doesn't discount them. That doesn't mean the options don't exist. It just means that you don't want to do that. I get it. But in these difficult decisions, sometimes it's the options that we don't want to consider and don't want to do that are sometimes the best and the easiest way to truly make change in our life, if we can own up to it and then hold ourselves responsible and accountable, and live with the consequences of that decision. Number 3, you have no clue on how to get started to create a life you want. Now, friendly advice, talking to your friends is a good way to get some of these things off your chest and start the discussion. And sometimes just hearing ourselves and what we say can also help us think through and process the situation that we're in. But recognize that friendly advice is going to be subjective, and misery is the most democratic of all emotions. And what I mean by that is misery loves company. If we're kind of miserable, we might hang out with people who are also miserable, and we will share in that miserableness. So, they might not be giving you good advice because they also like misery, and they might not know how to get out of it. And sometimes, even though while our friends' intentions are good and they're trying to give you a good solution, it can be biased. They may not have the experience that you need. They may not be seeing it in the same frame as you or capable of saying it. It's not objective, it's subjective. And it also might be the last thing that you want to do. So again, it's always good to hear what other people have to say, but don't just jump in and do what they say. Really think about all the various options. Think about what a number of different people are saying and try to come to terms with that. What I try to do when I'm trying to work a solution is I'm kind of a nerd this way, to do a SWOT analysis: strength, weakness, opportunity, and threats. And I would write out the scenario. I would do a SWOT analysis for each scenario. Say, one is, what if I stay? What will happen? What are the strengths? What's good about it? What's bad about it? What's the threat that I face in doing so? I don't know. I don't even have a good example, or the opportunities that present itself through that. Sometimes kind of gritting that out and thinking about decisions in that way, it can make your decisions kind of a no-brainer, because points that are very important to you will highlight themselves, and you'll see that there clearly is a direction that you want to go. But you have to grit it out and kind of compartmentalize your thoughts to make sure that you're doing it, and also realize that you may not be in a state of mind to where you're thinking very clearly too, and you might not be reading it correctly, and it may not be very real. What you're considering might not be very realistic, and that's where a good professional is going to give you objective information and kind of make you think about what is, and help you validate whether what you're thinking is real or not. I think our number 4. You have tried everything and nothing has worked. Well, let me just say, we all do this. We all learn through trial and error. And not to be cliched, but cliches exist for a reason. There's a lot of truth and validity to them, in that winners never quit and quitters never win. Sometimes it takes a lot of trial and error to figure out the right way to do things. Sometimes we think we're doing the right thing, and then we find out how wrong it is. That's just life, and it can be really depressing when nothing you try works, when you're not getting traction on the change that you want. So much so that most people will just give up and stop trying. They'll settle for what they have rather than really going for what they want, and that is not what a swift kick in the ass is about. A swift kick in the ass is really about a wake-up call to say, you know what, I'm not going to settle. I'm going to create positive change. Come hell or high water, I'm going to live life on my terms. Our lives are a learning process, and there's a lot of trial and error involved. Some of us get lucky and learn the right way to do things first, but that's not really the case for everyone, and we all face making wrong decisions and learning from them. And sometimes we learn what not to do, and through that we know what doesn't work. So we have to keep trying to figure out what works. Don't settle for things that you can make better, and stop wasting your time trying to change things outside of your control. You cannot change other people. You can influence them. You can talk to them, but you can't make people do things, and you can't make people change just because you think they should change or think that they should be some other way. You can only change yourself. You can only control yourself. And that control that you have in this world probably ends at your fingertips. A professional, again, is going to help you figure out what can work, what's realistic, what are you wasting your time on. They can help you. Sometimes sometimes it can make just a world of difference and make those light bulbs go off in your head, or a light switch. Sometimes we're plagued, we're so deep and consumed in thought, and suddenly, boom, we have the answer. We've reached it, and at that point we can start moving beyond and getting the hell out of there. Again, this has happened to me so many times in my life, to where I struggle with what to do, and then it's like a light switch. Someone turns on the light, and boom, I know exactly what I need to do, and it's a trigger for me to take action. Because again, we can only take action for ourselves in our own lives. Again, a professional can help you get going and try to help you figure out what will work. 5, 4. You engage in or play some part that involves harmful behaviors. Our view of the world can be so skewed that what is abnormal or harmful can seem like a normal, average, everyday part of life. When my ex-fiance told me that she wished I would hit her so that she knew I cared, a light bulb went off, and I knew who I was dealing with, and I knew that was not right. I've never hit a woman. I would never hit a woman. That's not who I am. I'm not a violent person. And if you're hurting others or they are hurting you, you definitely need to get some help, because it's not right. While this podcast is called A Swift Kick in the Ass, which would denote some violence, kicking someone in the ass hurts. This podcast is all about helping others and creating positive change, not trying to control, but perhaps influence people. Sometimes we need a wake-up call to recognize, and will kind of wake us up to say, hey, you know what, this is not right. This podcast is not about hurting or harming others. And, my fiance had a very warped sense of love and caring. And caring and love does not involve, nor should it involve, acts of violence or hurting someone. It doesn't show that you care. It's just plain wrong. Seek help if you're in that situation. Six, 7, I don't even know where we are here. You lack a support system. We need people in our lives that can care about us and that we can trust. If you're with a person who is burning your bridges of people that you have long-term established relationships with, who know you, love you, care about you, let that raise a red flag. This is not just about you and that other person. Your world, your life should involve more than just your spouse or your boyfriend or girlfriend. Your life and your world should include many different people who love and care about you and are not trying to harm you. And that was another red flag that I had when my ex-fiance was burning bridges between my long-term friends, who I considered to be brothers and sisters, my mom and my dad. They didn't even want to attend the wedding. She was systematically destroying the life that I had spent all those years building, and I can only imagine if I would have stayed in that relationship. Probably one of us would be in prison, or the other one would be 6 foot under. I don't know. As I said, I don't condone violence, but I absolutely see how people can get drawn into that, and it's even harder to get out of it. once you're in it, once you've passed that threshold, once children are in the picture, it's tough. It destroys lives, and sometimes getting out of it will destroy your life, and it'll have a negative impact on other people. But if it's not right and people are being harmed, you need to definitely consider that and get some help. Doesn't have to be that way. Having to let go of people I thought were my friends for this reason. They were doing more harm to me than good. Some people I really thought were my friends, and I knew in the back of my mind that the relationships were one-sided, that they weren't really true exchanges of friendship. I came to terms and I just said, hey, you know what? Being a friend is accepting people for who they are. And this is just the way they are, and I can accept that, and we're friends. Well, that's a bunch of BS. When it ends up hurting you in the process. Good friends don't hurt each other. They help you live better lives. They provide support. They provide love and caring. But it's got to be a two-way road. Of course, our friends are going to influence each other. But controlling one another, now that's a whole nother story. And just because your friends say you need to do something doesn't mean that you have to do it. That choice is yours. And letting go of some of the people who I thought were my friends, I can say it wasn't easy letting them go. There were some people that where I left it was I was going to hit them in the face. I was so upset about it. I turned around and I found myself smiling because I knew that was a good decision to let those people leave my life. And don't let them back in, because they're not going to change. And they are who they are, and that's fine. But that doesn't mean that you have to be involved with them. So if people are causing you harm or just getting you in trouble, think about letting them go and moving on and finding better friends, better people to share your life with. As I think about my life, yes, I've let some people go. And it's been healthy to do that. But my good friends, and I have a core group of friends that have gotten me through some of the darkest times in my life, and they're there for the good times as well as the bad times. It's easy to be a friend when times are good. And the way you really determine how good of a friend someone is if they're there for you during the hard times and how they treat you during those hard times. It's because of the support that I have in my support network that I'm very thankful for my friends, and I know I am who I am today because of their love and caring and genuinely positive influence that has helped me make good decisions and helped me live with the bad decisions, help me get through it and learn from it. And in the return, I do the same for them. And some of these discussions that you have to have, no one really likes to tell their friend that they're screwing up. At least you shouldn't be getting a lot of joy out of that. Or they shouldn't be getting joy out of telling you that you're screwing up. Good friends can kid each other and it's all fun and games, but when it comes right down to it, there's a lot of love and caring there with our friends. And the quality of our life is really dependent on these relationships. When we spend our time and effort making our friendships and our relationships better and stronger, life gets better. So that gets me through my list. I'd like to leave you with two quotes to wrap this up. I think they have a lot of meaning to me, and hopefully you get a lot out of it too. The first one is from Dale Carnegie. You can make more friends in 2 months by becoming more interested in other people than you can in 2 years by trying to get other people interested in you. I recognize that I can kind of be self-absorbed at times, but I always try to ask people questions and try to know what's going on in their life. The world doesn't revolve around any one of us. And it's easy to think that it does. It's much more difficult to recognize that, the world doesn't revolve around me or this one person. We're all in this together. And unless you can get input from the other person, you really don't know. So ask a lot of good questions, and also that's going to help you develop your relationship with them and help them see their point of view. And the last quote is Thomas J. Watson. Don't make friends who are comfortable to be with. Make friends who will force you to lever yourself up. And that means is that our friends, they make us better people. They move us beyond who we are today and help us grow as people. And they can help us live by our terms. In fact, our friends are one of those terms of our life that we can renegotiate. Just because you think someone's your friend right now, if they're doing you harm or getting you into trouble or some other negative consequence of having them in your life, I'm not talking about them going through a rough patch. We all go through rough patches, and we need to be there for our true friends when they're going through rough patches, so they'll be there for you during yours. This, again, is a two-way street. But we should always be building each other up and helping each other live the way we want to live. And it's not up to them, it's up to us. Again, we're influenced by our friends, but we should not be controlled by them. So, again, I don't advise against pissing on a cat, but it was fun, and it was getting back at that darn cat. I did actually, after I did it, I did realize what I had done. And my fiance was upstairs, and I thought, oh, crap, I just pissed on the cat. I better get a towel and dry the cat off, or there's going to be all sorts of questions. And I ran after the cat with the towel, and the cat ran upstairs, and the ex-fiance asked me, she said, why is the cat all wet? And I was like, I don't know. So I just leave you with that, hoping Tom will be back on the podcast on one of these future episodes. He's doing well, and he's actually helping others through a group associated with Gilda Radner, and he's supporting other cancer patients and helping them. And he's getting a lot of doing a lot of good, I think, in that space, and it's really helping him. I know he enjoys doing that. So Tom has not left the building. He will be back. I'm keeping his seat warm while he's out. So until next time, this is your host, John Curran. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of A Swift Kick in the Ass, and that today's topic inspires you to get your ass moving and living on your terms. Please take a moment to rank this episode on iTunes or wherever you get this podcast. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Visit our website at aswiftkickintheass.com. Have a great day.